So, what we read this week is Ariel's nemesis, Pumpkin Everything.
We are going to ride at dawn.
Welcome to Cocktober, and welcome, well,
Kinda.
we didn't
Well,
start it with Cox. I don't know why she's blaming it on Google Maps.
these people are all nut jobs.
This bitch did keep up with him for 10 years.
Never?
Never. Hell no. That's no. I will say, this was a surprising read for the lack of everything in the book. But then as soon as you said it was going to be a Hallmark movie, I was like, oh, there's going to be no sex in this book at all.
It just dawned on me right now that we had nothing in the book. It just dawned on me.
Oh, yeah, there was nothing.
It just dawned on me. Do you know what my focus was on?
What?
The entire time I was reading, I was like, this was not written by somebody from New Hampshire. This was not written by somebody from New
Because
Hampshire.
she's from Massachusetts.
And we got to the end and I was like, masshole it was. And that's why.
I mean, there were some spots where I was like, oh, okay, except for when she called it man on the mountain, not man. Or wait, what was it? Yeah, it's supposed to be in the mountain. I was like,
right. I think she called it like man of the
whatever
mountain or something like that. Yeah, something like
man
that.
of the mountain.
It doesn't
that's what it
matter.
was.
But regardless, it read very touristy.
Well, yeah.
And so to get to the end and find out that yes, she was a Massachusetts. People from Massachusetts that visit New Hampshire on weekends.
I think it's just more so like
very different vibe.
The timing between how long it takes to actually get to certain places.
Yeah, and
like,
and the way things were worded, it was a very different vibe. And I was like, this is not written by somebody from New Hampshire. Not at all. And then
I've read plenty of books that aren't read by people from New Hampshire, but I mean it's better than some of the other books I've read where people write about New Hampshire, and
it was just so like name droppy too. And then I was like, okay, this is very touristy, and it was just such a validation when I got to the end, and I was like, yep.
Well, to
she's
be
from
fair,
Massachusetts.
The girl is basically
she's
like
a vacationer.
Ariel's just gonna be a fucking snob through this whole goddamn thing.
I probably should not have read a book about New Hampshire being from New Hampshire. Just saying.
You picked it.
I did, because I thought it was going to be fun to see.
I think it's cute. I thought it was cute.
Yeah.
Ariel didn't.
It had the possibility of being cute.
So you're just going to be, so we don't even need to discuss the book.
Hey, will keep an open mind to the movie.
No, you're not going to keep, you're not even going to, no, because you already read the book, so you don't even.
I'm going to watch the movie tonight, and I'm going to keep an open mind.
You're not. You already read the book. It's already ruined for you.
Nah.
Anyways, so what we read this week is Ariel's nemesis, Pumpkin Everything.
Oh, so that's my second point. Okay, listen, I am not a pumpkin spice girly. I just am not. I'm not here for the pumpkin vibes. I'm just not.
I'm not either, actually.
I felt a kinship with this woman when I read the blurb. I was like, oh, I'm going to be Team FMC. We are going to vibe. We are going to ride at dawn. We are going to be anti-pumpkin together. I am going to be with you forever. And then I find out that it was all basically just a ridiculous aversion, and we were not together for long. I was very salty.
I'm just very glad that Ariel's not the one covering this book, because you would hear the disdain in her voice for everything she speaks the entire time. So just know how this is going to go for me, because I have to sit here and explain this story, and Ariel's just going to be
rolling my eyes. No, I'm just kidding.
Rolling her eyes the entire time. And for anyone who does not know, because this is not a visual medium, and actually no one can see what my desktop looks like, all I can see is Ariel's face, because I have my notes pulled up next to her face, because I like seeing her reactions, because sometimes she does some crazy ones, and then other times she just looks like she's completely checked out for the day. So it's gonna be a lot of that. But anyways, yes, so this week we read Pumpkin Everything by Beth Labonte, and it is our first book of October. Welcome to Spooky Season. Welcome to Cocktober, and welcome, well,
kind of.
We didn't start it with Cox.
Listen, this is my first, shutting up now.
You know what? We decided to ease you into the month because sometimes you can't take all of it at once. You need to be warmed up a little.
There was no warming.
It was cute, okay? It warmed my insides, just not those insides.
This book went for those
Cozy vibes.
cozy fall vibes.
Yeah, which is
So
exactly we need to
later
give you
in the
we
month,
need to give you cozy fall vibes before we give you the
yeah,
dick, okay?
later in the month, we'll have the run for your life from a mask as we chase you down for dick.
And then we have one that is just a surprise.
Mm.
And
I think one we
it
have
sucks.
is just a novella of a maze, so that's cool.
I've got one about nodding, so there's that.
Solid.
We just
See,
we have a good variety. This was just the warm up. We are the fluffer, if you will. Don't look that up. Please don't Google any of those things. Anyways,
Fernouter
so
peanut butter.
I you know, fluffernutters are such a New England thing. Did you know that? I learned that.
I did know that actually.
There's a lot of things that I realized like living down here that are just a New England thing. There's so much. It's crazy. Anyways, so
That's why you can't pretend to be from, and then, no, I'm just kidding. Done. I'm done. Shutting up now.
anyways, here we go. Listen, Grandpa has driven through the Dunkin' Donuts. That is literally the first line of the book. And I personally laughed hysterically.
And not the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through that's probably backed up all the way around.
Amy, though, is not laughing. Also, my other complaint is how far it took us to get her name.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
and it is only single POV as well. So, just as a heads up, that is what we're going into when we get into this.
I forgot all the time because
Yeah. So she, though, is a bit more confused because she thinks her mom is being a little overdramatic. I mean, Amy should be the one being overdramatic right now. Her fiance cheated on her. The wedding's been canceled. Her writing career is barely hanging in there since she has writer's block. She tells her mom, who's on the phone, that drive-throughs are a modern day inconvenience. And her mom insists that, no, you don't understand. He drove through the Dunkin' Donuts.
do you know how many times that's actually happened?
A lot,
A lot.
actually.
And the other thing that happens a lot here, weirdly enough, is people driving through toll booths.
Yeah, we
I don't know why that's a thing,
we've
but
gotten rid of a lot of the toll booths down here. Amy just wants to make sure that her grandfather is all right. And if anybody was hurt, her grandfather did fracture his wrist, but other than that, no one else is hurt. He claims that he was pressing the brake when the car just went forward. And of course, her mom is like, "Ugh, I knew this was going to happen. I shouldn't have let him keep his license and I shouldn't have left him alone." Her grandfather lives in Autumnboro, New Hampshire, and she knows, Amy, that her
which is a made up
grandfather,
town.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. She knows that her grandfather has lived there for years and he loves it there. And it would crush him if her mom made him move. Of course, Amy hasn't been there since she went to Penn State 10 years ago and she avoids going there. Amy's mom says he's not getting any younger and they can't keep dealing with these types of things because they all currently live in Pennsylvania, Amy, her mom, etc., just not the grandfather. And they can't deal with these things from being so far away. And of course, everything with the grandfather had been running really smoothly until about 6 months ago when he started calling her mom at all hours, confused whether he had taken his medication or not. And of course, Amy wants him to be safe, but she also doesn't know how he would survive in this town without a car if her mom takes the car away. Amy asks if her mom is going to go there and take some time off work because he's going to need help, at least until his wrist has healed. Her mom says she can't go there. She can't take any time off from work, especially she's going to be working nonstop through Christmas. She's with this dude every night, and they're flying other people in on Saturday. Her mom is a host on a QVC show in Pennsylvania. Then her mom basically guilt trips Amy into wanting to go, even though Amy says, I can't. Her mom's like, I know you've been hiding here for 10 years. Why should I expect you to go and visit your poor sick grandfather? She is a very manipulative mother, by the way, and I did not like any word that came out of this woman's mouth. And I did not like how she spoke to Amy. Like, she even uses the fact that her grandfather did not like having any of, like, housekeepers in the house because he had one and he accused her of stealing. It was a whole thing. So her mom said, "You know what? His wrist will be healed in a few weeks, And even if the help steals some of his belongings, it'll make the move easier. Apparently, she had already looked into an assisted living facility in Pennsylvania. And they'll just have to notify the Parkers before they sell the house. The Parkers are a family that live in a
Downstairs.
downstairs.
So it's a two-family duplex, an upstairs and a downstairs duplex. Amy's family owns it.
But selling this house will cover the cost of assisted living for a few years. Of course, Amy's stomach drops a little bit at the mention of the Parkers and also at the thought of selling their house because this house has been in the family for generations. Amy asks about Pumpkin Everything, which is the country store that her grandmother had owned and her grandfather took over when the grandmother died. Apparently, by the way, the grandpa only took over because he thought Graham would haunt him if he let it go, which is so funny. And he only opens it a few hours, a few days a week. So it's not even like it's open that much. The mom's like, it's got to go. Of course, Amy doesn't like that either. She loved growing up in that town and she loved everything about it. But obviously, her mom did not miss it because her mother had big city dreams that were somehow fulfilled by hosting infomercials in the middle of Pennsylvania. Amy is really,
Apparently, that's the QVC capital of the world.
which is wild to
I
me. I've bought things off of QVC.
I have not, she said proudly.
Eh,
It's funny because I've noticed on TikTok lately that
mhm.
every once in a while I'll come across a live that's set up exactly like QVC.
Dude, I
Um,
think honestly, TikTok shops have become basically like the internet's QVC.
but sometimes I come across them that are set they have the counter,
That's
they have
fantastic.
they're
That's how
they're
I would do it.
demonstrating, and I'm like, "Dude, I'm having flashbacks
Should
of,
I
like,
just do
being at my
that?
grandparents' house and just having QVC playing in the background." Like, it
Oh my
was
god. Should I, like, make merch and then just sell our merch doing that? I'll just, like, be like a QVC thing.
using your kitchen counter, just yes, yes.
Amy is really trying to convince her mom not to get rid of it because it's a landmark, the store, and it belongs in her family, and so doesn't the house. And now she's just really having a bit of panic, though she has no reason to talk because she hasn't been there in a decade, not even once. She claims that she has her reasons for not going, and that reason is a man named Kit Parker, and he still lived in the downstairs unit of the house, and she just can't go back and face him after the way she treated him during the most difficult time in his life. Her mom asks, "Then what do you want me to do? Unless you're willing to pack your things up and go, I've run out of choices." Eventually, Amy just says, "You know what? I'll do it. I'll pack my things, I'll go there, and I'll take care of grandpa." Because when she was younger, he had always put her joy above his own. So now it's her turn to return the favor. What she should not have done is listen to Google Maps though, because it was directing her. This part I didn't understand because what whose fault anyways was directing her through the scenic route, which is great, but her car did not agree and it broke down. So I don't know why she's blaming it on Google Maps because she's the one who went that way. It does make her avoid big traffic, but at the same time, if you know that your car is kind of shitty, probably don't take the scenic route, you dum dum. So as she's sitting there, she's just thinking about everything. She thinks about how 4 months ago she thought she would also be joining the leaf peepers, who are the people who come and stare at all the leaves, by the way, with her husband Orion. And she realizes she should have known earlier than 4 months before the wedding that marrying someone with the name Orion couldn't lead to anything good. But he was handsome and athletic, and here they
True
are,
story, bro.
right? Even after all of her years of living in New Hampshire, she had never been stranded on the side of the road before, which I don't think I've ever been stranded on the side of the road before either. I ran out of gas once, but I was like 2 minutes from the gas station, and I was like 5 minutes from my house. So, and we get the history of what happened between her and Kit. So they had a boy next door, best friends to romance situation going on. And then Kit's mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack before their senior year, and he just turned into, as she calls, Kit Parker 2.0. Before everything, he was fun, optimistic, and then afterwards, he was literally just a shadow of himself. She tried to bring him back around, and as senior year went on, things just got worse. His grades started dropping, he started cutting classes, he didn't want any help, and then he bailed on taking her to their senior prom, which she had been planning with him for years. And he just told her that he didn't want to suffer through it. And that just had been her final straw. And she says it's just such a shallow thing to be a final straw, but she had had enough and she ended things. And that was the only time she saw any form of emotion in his eyes, but he just didn't say anything to her afterwards. And the next day, she accepted her admission offer to Penn State and she left, which honestly was probably the smartest decision, in my opinion, because you can't help somebody who doesn't want help. And if you are spending all this time trying to help a person and they very clearly just don't want it, there's literally nothing you can do. The tow truck arrives and turns out it's actually Kit, and Kit is Kit Parker 3.0, and he looks a lot more rugged and more lumberjacky model. And of course, every answer out of her mouth to him is just, yeah, because she's just nervous. She hasn't seen him in 10 years. She tells him that she didn't even recognize him. And Kit says, I've been trying out a new look for, 8 years now. She asks him about being a tow truck driver, and he goes, yeah, I was ready for a change of pace, and it's not a bad gig. You sometimes even pick up a famous author off the side of the road. Amy says, I can hardly call myself a famous author. And he just responds, oh, no, no, I meant Stephen King. He broke down here last week on his way back to Maine. Nice guy. He was kidding, by the way. He actually did mean her. So it should be noted now. Amy is an author and she's a USA Today best-selling author. So you're welcome. Kit, it seems, has read her books, but he is also the only person in town who has read her books. And it also turns out her books are kind of loosely based on her hometown. She asks about her grandfather, and of course, he knew all about the accident because he's a tow truck driver and he's the one who pulled him out of the Dunkin' Donuts. They drive back to the town in silence, and Kit breaks the silence at some point by saying that he had all these ideas for horror novels. But he could also see that she's a little bit nervous, especially when she asks if anybody in town has read her books. And he clocks this and even tells her, so you're nervous. And she goes, why would I be nervous? And he goes, oh, I don't know. If I had written an entire series of novels based on my hometown, then found myself unexpectedly returning to said hometown, I might just be a little bit nervous. And then he asks her why he's not in them, but then just says he's teasing her. And then he decides to tell her some of his book ideas, which none of them are great, by the way. Half of them were rip-off of Stephen King novels, and a quarter of them were ripped off of her own novels, and the rest of them just did not make any sense. So they turned onto Main Street in Autumnboro, and the blazing red sugar maples lit up both sides of the street. So this town is known as the autumn capital of the world, and they didn't get their name for nothing. And she realizes that nothing in this town has changed. It's the exact same. They pull up to Pumpkin Everything, and of course, the front door is closed, and there were several tourists that were kind of shaking their head in disappointment. And she thinks about if they had been able to go inside, they would have loved it. But if she was totally honest, the thought of stepping inside that store and getting walloped in the face by pumpkin spice made her a bit queasy. Her wedding had even been fall themed, and after everything with Orion, she developed a bit of an aversion to all things pumpkin and the smell of pumpkin spice. It literally makes her ill. Kit asks if they were thinking about selling, and she just says, my mom wants to, and she wants to sell the house as well. But he does tell her that he thinks it's great what she's doing and that Tom, her grandfather, must be thrilled that she's back. So then they pull into a parking lot at the funeral home, and while she waits because Kit is heading inside, a woman comes up to Amy. Turns out her name is Maggie, and she is her grandfather's girlfriend, which Amy had no idea about. And of course, Maggie
Surprise!
Maggie just yells out, "He's perfectly competent." And of course, Amy's a little taken aback by this. And Maggie is trying so hard to defend the grandfather's actions with the whole Dunkin' Donuts situation.
These people are all nut jobs.
They literally are. When Kit returns later, she learns that his brother Riley works at the funeral home and that he helps people organize their funerals before they die. They make their way over to her grandfather's house. They unload her things. And as she's climbing up the stairs, she realizes that maybe they should look into getting one of those like motorized stair lifts for her grandfather. But he would
I
probably
want
not be
one just
thrilled
to
about
play
it.
with.
I know, it sounds like so much fun,
Yeah, just to like zing.
right? But he would probably not be thrilled by it. And she's like, maybe he could pretend he was riding up fucking Loon Mountain every time he came home.
See? I could put like
I
scenery on the way.
exactly. That sounds like a
Make
great
it a new
idea.
ride every time.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? But of course, the grandfather's not currently home. He's at the senior center in the afternoons. So as soon as she comes into the house, she is completely smacked in the face with the smell of cinnamon and pumpkin spice, which, as we know, not great for her. The house is pretty much turned into a museum of the White Mountains. And Amy just makes a slight comment to Kit saying, wow, he really spread out. And Kit's like, yeah, there's a lot of space here for one old man. And Amy gets a little taken aback by it, thinking he's insulting her, which her actions bother me a lot, by the way. Anyways, and that he's taking a dig at her because the grandfather's there alone. She's definitely feeling so much guilt about not being there for the grandfather that she just picks these little fights with him. Kit answers that he wasn't saying she did anything wrong. It wasn't implying that, you know, he was trying to guilt trip her literally at all. If she thinks that Tom, the grandfather, would be happier in Pennsylvania, then great. Amy says, I'm sure he'd love being near us, but look around. This is the only home he's ever known. Kit says, giving up this house wouldn't be easy for me either. I don't want you to think it would be. It's just sometimes we have to make hard choices. And sometimes we have to make sure that we're looking at the bigger picture. Kit really is like the voice of reason at this point. What is wrong with you?
Kit can suck it. No, I'm just kidding.
He's got a valid point though.
Kinda, but he's being selfish, and we don't know this yet, but we know now. So his
No,
all
but
stuff
but
going back,
but she is also being selfish at the same time. Like she's being selfish because of the guilt.
yes, but she's also trying to
But she
do
also
right
is trying
by
to
her
make
grandfather
decisions.
now.
But does she know that that's what the grandfather wants?
And I feel like Kit's being manipulative.
So the senior center shuttle pulls up to the house and Amy goes to meet her grandfather. The bus driver says, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to meet you." Her name is Susan. And that her grandfather has been so excited to have her back. And that's all he's been talking about. She's like, Tom told us you were getting married this month, but now you're here. And then the realization like kind of sinks into this poor bus driver lady. Amy says, "Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but it was nice to meet you." Susan's like, "Oh, I've been meaning to read your books. I'm going to look them up as soon as I get home." And the grandfather even spells out her full author name. And Amy wants to die because she knows what's in these books. After the bus leaves, she talks with her grandfather, and he just says, "Listen, I drove through that donut shop like a fool, and now I've lost my car and my freedom in one fellow swoop. That was only phase one. Phase two is your mother shipping me off to some nursing home with the old people." And Amy says, "You know that I'm here to help you try and stay in the house." The grandfather just says, "Look, don't take this the wrong way. Like, I'm happy you came, and, you know, I know all about what happened between you and Aquarius, but what does a young dude?" It's my favorite thing in this whole book, by the way. "But why would a one young girl like you want to come live here in the middle of nowhere? Like, it's not exactly Cancun." He's basically saying, "I love you, but you should be out living your life." She tells him that as soon as he is all healed up and back in his routine, she'll be off to Cancun. She heads up to her old bedroom. She's just trying to placate this old man. She heads up to her old bedroom to unpack her things. So, everything that she hadn't brought with her to college, her mom and dad packed up and took with them when they moved. So, the walls are empty, like everything is empty. She does go into her closet to hang her clothes up and she sees the initials of her and Kit in her closet. So, what had happened is they had just returned home from their sophomore year ski trip and things had been changing with them for a while that led up to the moment while they were there. And when she turned to look at him while they were on the little gondola, he kissed her. And like that was their turning point. They went back home, they said goodnight at Kit's apartment, and she just ran straight up to her room and wrote their initials in her closet. She's also hoping that maybe the small amount of time she's spending in Autumnboro would be enough to get her creative juices flowing because she's been in such a writing rut, which understandable. Sometimes you need a change of scenery to like get those creative juices flowing. Kit ends up knocking on the front door and she greets him and he's just telling her that, "Oh, I was just coming to by to let you know that your card is in the shop and Donnie says he'll look into it tomorrow." And when I dropped it off, I told Donnie who it belonged to, and the name must have rung a bell because he's just saying, "Oh, I've been meaning to read her books," and he just hadn't. But now that you're back in town, he turns out he jumped right on Amazon and ordered one right then and there. So, oops. I do think that one of my favorite subtle jokes throughout this entire book is that had nobody says her ex fiance's name correctly every single time, and they just come up with different names for it. It's amazing. Like, just so funny.
I
The
mean, who
grandfather calls
names
him
their
Oedip.
kid Orion?
I mean, they call him Oedipus at one point. It's just so funny. That is true. You know, her grandfather.
That's your own damn fault. I mean,
Yep,
honestly.
yep. Her grandfather tells Kit, "Oh, I was just about to order pizza," and that his grim reaper of a brother should just join it. Yes, it's because Riley works at the funeral homes because of a grim reaper. Should just join them. Amy tells Kit to.
Well, because Riley keeps trying to get the grandfather to book with him and plan his funeral so that he can have peace of mind. But the grandfather is vehemently against this and
So funny.
thinks that this is morbid and wants him to leave him the fuck alone. But
It's
Riley
it's
keeps
a little morbid.
trailing after him, playing Pokemon Go, trying to get him to plan his funeral. So yeah, they have a
It's
little
so
thing.
funny. Yeah, Amy tells Kit to warn Riley that she is there because she still doesn't even know what she's going to say to him. 10 minutes later, both Kit and Riley are there, and she says hi to Riley and that it was good to see him again. And he just says, "Hi, I literally thought we'd never see you again." She jokes that it was before Grandpa literally drove through a Dunkin' Donuts, but he just blinks at her. Kit says he doesn't hate her, they just kind of need to talk. And all she can think about is, we also need to talk. She's also curious about his life internally. She doesn't ask out loud. And like thinking about if he found somebody, but of course the thought of him finding somebody gives her stomach pains and then of course guilt, but she asks her grandfather if her mom knows about Maggie. And the grandpa just says, "My love life is none of your mother's concern." When the pizza gets delivered, the delivery guy's like, "Oh, Amy Fox, Tom always mentions the books you wrote, like you're famous." And she's like, "Nope, not really famous." And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. Tom's a straightforward guy. Like, if you're famous, I'm going to take his word for it. And now I'm going to go get one of your books." Bro, this poor woman.
I just love that she, with the, at least with the pizza delivery guy, she like just takes a breath because she's like, oh, at least I don't know this dude. So at least I didn't write about him until the grandfather says, oh yeah, he's on the bowling league. He's an excellent bowler. And then she's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Cause
I
all
wrote
she
about the
can,
bowling league.
yeah, because all she could think about is that while the House of Pizza escaped mention in her book, the Autumn Borough Ballers did not. And so now more and more people in the town are wanting to read her books, and she does not want them to. Riley had been avoiding eye contact with her, by the way, for most of the meal, because again, they haven't had a conversation. Food was all done. Grandpa moved into the living room, and Riley leaves. And then Kit was like, "Do you want to join me on the porch?" So she does, and he lights up a pumpkin spice candle on the table. And he notices that every single time that happens, she looks like she smelled a dead animal. And she just says, "It's things that smell like that that have been bothering me for a few months now. My wedding was supposed to have been fall themed, hay bales, pumpkin centerpieces, whole cliche shebang." And she had been in the middle of crafting pumpkin centerpieces when everything went south and insists that she just needs to get over it. It's sort of ridiculous. He asks what happened between her and origami. He says, sorry, I did put all of those little cute little names in there because it's so funny. Amy says that he was cheating on me for years, which is insane. And I only figured out 4 months before the wedding. And he was kind of a jerk also for years. Kit asked why she stayed with him if he was a jerk. And she just said, "I don't know. I guess I didn't know it could be better than that." And of course, there's a little bit of hurt in Kit's eyes because, as we know, they have a history. She asks about his love life, and he says that he was with somebody for 4 years, but that ended pretty undramatically a while back. She moved to California. She could not take the winters. She had asked him to go with her, but he was not ready to leave. He's still really not ready to leave. Besides, she wasn't the one, anyways. She wasn't right for him. And that she was always trying to change him, and she couldn't understand why he had wanted to stay there. Amy apologizes, and Kit says, "It's okay. I asked you first, anyways. It's human nature to want to know if the one that got away ever got away with someone else." And of course, that's going to stick in her mind because, like, what do you mean the one that got away? Don't be dumb. You know what's happening. She then also apologizes for her comments about how she didn't know it could be better than Orion because Kit was better. Amy set her alarm for super fucking early in the morning. And of course, her grandfather, not thrilled with this, and told her that she is not going to check on him every morning to make sure he is alive because that's what they do in assisted living. Her grandfather is very outspoken about what he does not like. She says that she just wants to help him, especially, with everything, and like asks if he needs help in the shower, but like not in the actual shower, but maybe she could stand outside the shower. And he's a little offended about this. He's got a shower with his bum ass wrist. So she wraps his cast in a grocery bag and duct tape so that he can shower. And she's just going to go make breakfast. He asks for sausage and eggs, but when she looks in the fridge, there's literally no food in this house, just three kinds of Oreos and a pint of coffee ice cream and a bag of frozen peas that are wrapped in a towel. So she's gonna go over to Kit's house and see if maybe he has food. He does. He gives her eggs, butter, bread, sausage, and just tells her to put the bread back whenever she's done and gives her a spare key. He offers to take them grocery shopping when he gets off of work so that they can stock up, and that he would have taken Tom sooner if he had known he had no food, but she says it's not your job to check on him. 15 minutes later, she has breakfast all ready to go and even gives the grandfather his pills that he's supposed to be taking and reminds him that if he forgets to take his pills and another disaster happens, her mom is going to ship him out of there. He thanks her and says, I appreciate everything. I appreciate the breakfast. And that he didn't even think he had food in the house to make breakfast. And she goes, I didn't. I had to borrow it from Kit. I sacrificed my pride for you, old man. And the grandfather's like, yeah, you two used to be a thing, weren't you? And she's like, yeah. And he asks her what happened. And she realizes she never actually told him what happened. So she does tell him everything. Afterwards, her grandfather just says, so that's why you stayed with Odysseus for so long. You almost married that fool because you were trying to punish yourself for how you treated this one. And I just love how nobody gets his name right. And she corrects them every time and they just don't care. Half an hour later, her and her grandfather go to Pumpkin Everything and they spend the next few hours packing up the inventory that had been delivered and going over store operations. Her grandfather expresses that he does enjoy it there, but it would be nice to be able to go in whenever he felt like rather than having everything depend on him. And he's too old to be there 7 days a week. Amy says, you could just hire a part time employee. And he goes, don't take this the wrong way, darling. You are my granddaughter, and I love you. I'm just not sure that you are the best judge of character. And Amy's like, what is that supposed to mean? And he goes, do I need to bring up that fool Archimedes again? She promises not to hire anybody without his approval. And so they put a help wanted sign in the window. A young blonde woman walks in, and turns out her name is Josie. I fucking love Josie, by the way. And it is her grandfather's good friend. She's about the same age as Amy. And she keeps him company. She also brings him coffee and all this other stuff. And Amy kind of can see that this girl looks like Amy, but dressed in her mom's clothes because Josie just sits home and orders QVC. Why? Because Josie fucking won the goddamn Powerball. And she's like, I bought my parents a house on Cape Cod, my sister in Maine. She bought herself one up the river. She won't travel though to go anywhere because she has a fear of flying. And, you know, which I get.
She very distinctly says she does not have a fear of flying. She has a fear of traveling.
Oh, that's what it is. Sorry. The grandfather offers Josie to work there, and Josie's like, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing!" Because it's something for her to do. And she's like, "You guys don't even have to pay me to be here." Like, she also has a lot of money because she's there all the time, anyways. This woman she's just bored. And she spends so much money on everybody else. Like, so the whole book, like, she's always buying stuff for people. And, like, she's a very caring person. I liked her.
She's lonely.
She is lonely. Yeah. So at 3, they close down the shop and head home. And she tells her grandfather that Kit offered to take them grocery shopping, but the grandfather's just like, yeah, go without me. I trust you. She had been hoping to have the grandfather as a bit of a buffer between the two of them, but it's fine. She does kind of dress up a little bit, and I fucking laughed because she sprays herself with the Britney Spears perfume. And both Kit and her grandfather call it out, and she's like, no. I mean, it smells really good. I used to wear that perfume too, to be honest. She tells Kit about meeting Josie and about the day, and Kit offers that maybe they should go eat first because he has literally no food in his house and he's very hungry. And they can't go grocery shopping on an empty stomach, which is a terrible idea because I've done that and then I end up spending way more money on groceries than I need to. They're going to go to the Plaid Apple for dinner. The inside of this restaurant also has not changed ever. So the whole town is just like chilling in the 80s at this point. And they kind of reminisce about their past while they're there. Of course, there is a lot of tension between them, two of them. The sexual tension, this is all. This is the only sexual tension, and it's in their heads. And she tries to focus the attention on her menu instead of the hormones running through her body. That's all we get about hormones. That's it. When the waitress comes over, her name is Jackie, and she goes, "Oh, I didn't know you were back in town. You write books now, don't you? I mean, I've been meaning to read them." And she writes her name down as well on a notepad and like circles it so many times so she can also get the books later on. The waitress also talks about Kit getting a degree in resort management, which Amy had no idea that he even went to college. But then again, this bitch did keep up with him for 10 years.
It should be noted that this restaurant is what she calls the opposite of her grandfather's store. Her grandfather's store is pumpkins, everything. This
This is
store is
apples, everything.
basically apples, everything. The entire restaurant is decorated in plaid apples everywhere
I
and
mean, it's called the
obsessive
Plaid Apple,
apples.
so it would make sense. She had no idea he went to college, but at the same time, she didn't want to ask about his life after high school. And then she also just felt ashamed at that thought, too. Jackie says, "Oh, you can get the ball rolling on that." Then she gets cut off by Kit. This kid doesn't want her to know the plans that he has, which we learn later on. And Amy starts asking questions about the degree and what he's planning on doing with it. And he's kind of standoffish a bit about it and not giving much information. But then he asks her about her life back in Pennsylvania and what she does and what a day in the life is like. And honestly, it's kind of very fucking depressing what her day is like. He tells her that it just sounds like she's putting too much pressure on herself and that maybe she should relax because sometimes that's when the magic happens. Kit also, we learn, volunteers at the Senior Citizens Council, and he has for the last 10 years, and he puts together a special event for the seniors, and it really does solidify how good of a person he is. The next morning, her mom is on the phone with her, explaining to her about the Medi Magic 3000, which is an automatic pill dispenser to help out her grandfather taking pills every day. By the way, this motherfucker yells at you to take your pills so loud. Amy tells her mom that it feels really good to get back, but her mom says, don't get too attached. Things can change in an instant, which is crazy considering she bullied her own daughter to going back. And I understand she just did it because she wants to prep and get everything like she wants to sell shit, like everything. She just wants to move on. So the fucking medicine machine goddamn yells at you every single day to take your pills.
If he doesn't answer it quick enough, they call the mom,
Yeah, no one wants
the
that.
the designated caregiver. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the grandfather is really concerned that this is just going to be like an assisted living place because a nurse is going to come by and fill it when it's empty. Then all of a sudden, she's going to be asking for a spare key. And then the next thing you know, she's loudly jingling the doorknob just to make sure he's not dead. Amy tells him, look, you can either humor mom by letting that machine yell at you a few times a day, or you can go back to your system of randomly taking your meds whenever you remember and see how long it is before she moves you into an assisted living facility. He asks her why it's so important that he stays there. And she just says, this is my last connection to him. She's talking about Kit, by the way. And when I think about losing our last connection, I get chest pains. The grandfather says, this house is my last connection to her too, the grandmother. I won't say it gives me chest pains to think about losing it though, because, that is just where he spent every single moment in his life there. Her grandfather is picked up by the shuttle. She goes over to Pumpkin Everything. She straightens the merchandise, chats with customers, and she just feels like a strong connection to her grandmother that she never experienced before at the store. Josie stops in with some lunch for her because this bitch has not eaten lunch, and she goes, what would you do without me? She's so cute. And asks her how long she's going to be there for. Amy says, a few weeks. I came to check on my grandfather, make sure the store was in good shape. Once his wrist is better, I guess that's it. Josie asks her if she's ever considered staying, though, because it'd be kind of nice to have someone around her own age there. She's like, I like these people, but like, bro. And she's like, what do I know about running a country store? And Josie tells her about as much as Tom did when the store was left to him. You're not just the granddaughter, you were the granddaughter. But Josie says, I'm not trying to guilt you into anything. I just really, really like this place. And mentions that she's also been meaning to read some of her books. Amy makes a phone call over to Donnie at the auto shop to check on her car. And it is very clear that he has now read the book that he inspired. And he tells her it's going to be a few days before the parts come in. So now starts the town slowly turning on.
Well,
And
he
he's
has to
like,
hunt down some parts, and that might take a few days. And then maybe when he can find them, then that might take a few more days. And he really has no time frame for her. Maybe the character in her book, Ronnie, would have had better luck, but too bad he's such a dumbass.
and now starts the town turning on her. Friday night, she runs into Kit and he is dressed up as if he's going on a date, which he is, by the way. And he just is like, are we cool? And she goes, yeah, we're cool. Then he asks if she wants to go sightseeing tomorrow. And she says, okay. Because, like, yeah. And she goes, I'll see you bright and early at 8 a.m. Absolutely fucking no, by the way. Absolutely not. That's too early for me. Nope. I won't get up bright and early to go sightseeing. Hell no. That's no.
That's the time you go with things like that.
Nope. Not me. She's just trying to remind herself that him dating is okay. Listen, bitch, you let him go. I don't know what to tell you. He's allowed to date. But anyway, so it's cold the next morning. Amy was really excited to do some sightseeing, and it's not only because it would involve spending time with Kit, but it's been years since she experienced everything. And apparently it's only a 10-minute drive to get to the flume. So I don't know where they live. So just gonna put that out there. I guess 10 minutes from the flume. So
I mean, that's an hour away from me. and he went to White Mountain Community College, which is also an hour away from me, but not the same hour.
So they live somewhere up there.
But not the same hour.
Kit tells her, it's kind of funny that you're excited to be here after you couldn't get out of here fast enough because she really is acting like a tourist. She just tells him it's not fair to tell me I couldn't get out of here fast enough. I mean, I know it was awful for leaving, but I had my reasons, even if they were selfish. He asks her why she's being so hard on herself. And Amy says it's because I broke up with you for not wanting to take me to prom. And Kit says, yeah, but that wasn't the real reason. That was just the last straw. Amy says, yeah, but it was such a small thing. I just gave up. I left you, and whatever reasons I thought I had, they didn't hold up after I'd gone. Kit says, it was never on you to fix me. And then he tells her the story of everything. And he explains that Riley is the one that ended up convincing him to finally go to therapy because he had said that if he was going to give up college in order to be around for Riley, then maybe he should try to be more like someone he actually wanted to be around. So he did. He went to a therapist. He ended up getting absorbed into a quilting club, which is so funny. And
With all
they,
the old ladies
yes, and they didn't let
who had
anything slide.
also
Known his
lost
mom.
their parents.
Well, yeah, because they're old,
So he,
not
right,
as
but
young.
he felt a kinship to someone else who
Yes.
had known his pain, even though it wasn't quite the same.
Yeah. And they didn't let anything slide either. They kept trying to pull him into their conversations, but that's also why he volunteers at the Senior Citizens Council because he wants to pay them back for everything that they did for him. Amy says, I'm still sorry I wasn't there for you, but I'm glad that you found people who were. And then they held some hands. Voices come up and down the path. So they decide to continue climbing from their rock and just continue their hike to the flume. All of a sudden, there's just a massive crack of thunder and it starts to fucking downpour. So they go into a rain shelter. Kit puts his arms around her and she looks up to them and they're like, you think they're gonna kiss? But then they hear another couple coming in and that breaks the moment. Kit talks to these people and he asks how long they've been married, and they say that they've been married for 42 years and they've been coming up there from Massachusetts every summer and fall. Amy's keeping an eye on the radar, and finally the storm passes and they can all leave. They go from the flume to Clark's trading post, which is so funny because I never went there as a kid and I still have never been to Clark's trading post.
Never?
Never.
I went quite a few times as a kid, and then we used to go, to the flume and all that.
Well, I've been to the flume
Probably,
and I've been to the
probably
flume
at
as an
least
adult.
every other summer. It was not, we used to go like on purpose when like tourists were not all the time there.
Well,
Like,
yeah. Well, no, like I've been hiking in the mountains. I've been to
yeah.
the flume. I've been to the Man in the Mountain. I've been to most of these places that they have talked about, like the
Yeah, my
Canyon Lakes
grandparents used to
Highway.
take us to Clark's Trading Post.
Gotcha. I just never went, so I didn't get to experience the Wolf Man. I'm a little disappointed. Anyways,
I'm a little disappointed for you too.
but yeah, Kit says, "Hey, do you want to go to one more stop?" And they go to Profile
It
Lake
was
and
never
sit on the.
traumatic for me as a kid though. I don't remember it being that traumatic.
I know some people like it was traumatic for them, but like
I always
I
remembered it was
just
like funny, not
yeah, I think if you're, like, really, really young, maybe it could be traumatic. I don't know, Ariel, you have a lot of trauma, so maybe it just was funny in general to you.
maybe my sick brain just thought it was funny that he was tormenting people.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just gleefully laughing with him. I don't know.
I actually have a question about this next part too, and only because I can't because I haven't been here in a while. So they go to Profile Lake and they look up at Cannon Mountain where the old man in the mountain used to be. You can't sit on the beach, can you? Like, you have to stand from, like, an observation, like, there's, like, a deck thing, right, that you
So
can
they
see.
have, well, okay.
I know
So
Profile Lake is there, but I didn't think you could sit on the
yes.
beach.
So there's not really a beach. I mean, I don't think
I haven't
they,
been in years.
yeah, it's mostly for like fishing and things like that. It's not like I'm just going to go hang out there and look. There's observation decks and stops along the highway
Yeah, so that you
and
can look at
through,
the old because I remember that,
right.
but I didn't because I was like, I don't think you can do that.
No, I know. I got to that point too, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that that's not where you can look and do that. But I mean,
But again, like I haven't
who
been
knows
there
how
in
long ago,
years.
right, that this is thought to be.
Yeah, that's true.
And as a New Hampshire person, it never stops being sad to drive by where the old man in the mountain
It
used to
is
be. I know
very
that
depressing.
sounds so stupid, but it does.
It's a national it's a landmark, okay?
I know, but
I
like every time you
it's
drive by, it's still sad.
here we are so Just as we are reminiscing, they were also reminiscing. Sorry. Amy takes a step closer to Kit, pulls his hands out of his pockets, and just holds his hands, and then they kiss. And they make out for a while. And then they make their way back to the car. They head back to the house. And before she can unlock the door, Kit just tells her to close her eyes. She thinks they're going to kiss again. That is not what's happening, by the way. And but whatever she does, do not open her eyes. And a moment later, she smells pumpkin spice. And he tells her just breathe it in and think about today. So he's just trying to change the memory that she has associated with pumpkin spice, with the bad thing, with something good. And then he sets the candle back down and then he kisses her some more. And it's cute. The next morning, she's on the bus with the senior citizens heading to the outlets in Tilton, which I have gone. I like the outlets
I
in
like
Tilton.
almost
I
every
don't know.
day when
I
I
used to
lived
go
near
all the
there.
time. Yeah. I love them. But despite having a great night before, she just kept having dreams about Kit telling her that he was leaving. On this bus, of course, her grandfather is just chatting her up, talking about her. And a bunch of them are like, "Oh, we're gonna buy your books. We're gonna buy this book is on sale. Let's just get it." And a lot of them do, and she goes, "Thank you. That's very kind. I'm just gonna go right now." And her grandfather asks if she's all right, and she just says, You've read my books, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I mean, you may have taken a few liberties, but it's not like you wrote anything that wasn't true." So it's just so funny. The next morning, her grandfather asks if it's all right if he has a guest over. I guess Maggie comes over once a week to watch old movies, and sometimes she stays over. And she goes, "Yeah, I got you. That's fine. I don't want to be here." And that happens. And she stands up, clears the plates, and goes, "You know what? I never returned the spare key," and gets the fuck out of there because, like, this is an awkward conversation. And she heads over to Kit's apartment. She knocks on the door, but no one's there. So she ends up going inside and she's like, "You know what? It wouldn't hurt if I just go look around at his bedroom." You don't go into people's houses when they're not there and go into the rooms. So she goes through Kit's room, and when she goes through there, she ends up finding a notebook on the bedside table. And she gets curious. Guys, don't do this either. And she starts flipping through it and she sees Autumn Burrow Inn. So
Naughty,
now her
naughty.
curiosity is going, and it turns out to be plans for turning her home into a bed and breakfast. And she feels absolutely
And
gutted knowing this is why he had been so vague with what he was planning to do after college with his degree.
manipulative.
He explains that I don't think it was because he stopped doing the idea when she came back.
Mm.
He did. That's why
He
I'm not
had
so
these
mad.
subtle little manipulations.
No, he just, I don't think so. But that's you. You also don't trust any form of anything with a penis. So
I
I
don't
don't,
trust any form of anything, really.
that is true. Okay, fair point. But this is why he'd been so vague with what he was planning to do after college with this degree. She thought that what happened between the two of them the other night could have been the beginning of something, but all it had been was a goodbye kiss, and she felt so stupid. She had been sneaking in there to see if his bedroom had changed, but, you know, oopsies. She's like, but all he cares about is how soon her grandfather and her would be out of his hair so he could get on with his plans. And she rushes out of his apartment. She makes it back to the house, and her grandfather's like, "I thought you ditched me." And she goes, "I'm sorry. I would never ditch you." And he reminds her that Maggie will be there around 5. And she says, "Not a problem at all." And she starts power walking down the road and is heading towards the towing company because she is going to confront Kit.
I'm pretty sure she starts power walking, but then within a few seconds, she ends up full on sprinting. Because by the time
Well,
she's there, she is gasping and out of breath and sweaty as
I
all
mean,
hell.
power walking honestly would do that to me. So I power walk too far, depending on how far it is from her house to the towing company. Because she remember, neither they don't have cars right now.
Here, power walking is just like getting a little hustle in your step.
Depending on the weather, if it's cold, then absolutely I'd be gasping because the cold air hurts my lungs really bad. And it has nothing to do with me being out of shape either. She gets there, goes back, and tells him she wants an explanation for the things she saw and that she saw his little notebook and the Zillow printout and all of his little guidebooks for turning her home into a tourist trap.
Let
He
me
says,
admit that I broke into your house and went through your things.
right? He says, "I can explain it." And she goes, "I know what I saw." And he goes, "You wanted an explanation." And she goes, "Well, I changed my mind. I know exactly what's going on. You want to buy my house and turn it into a hotel." And he goes, "Yeah, but," and she goes, "And in order to do that, you need my grandfather and me to move out." And he goes, "Yeah, but it's not that simple." Turns out the notebook was actually his mom's, his dead mom, and she had been planning to turn
She
the
did.
house into an yeah, she had been planning to turn the house into an inn, and he knows that the house means a lot to her family, but all of those ideas in that journal, they were his mom's, and he really wanted to make his mom's dream a reality. Amy's like, "So what? Then I go home and tell my grandfather that there's been a change of plans, that it's best we sell the house and put him in an assisted living."
All because you want to live out someone's dream who's not here.
He just
That's
told me that the
baloney.
house is I get it because
You want to
not
displace an old man and his
he changed
home that
no,
he
okay.
loves.
No,
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 no, no, no.
but this is where she's coming from. You want to
Right.
displace an old man of his home, of that he loves, all because you found a notebook that your mom once made that she didn't even tell you that she wanted to do this, but you found a notebook that she once made designing the house into an inn that you don't even know if that was truly her want. She dead, but you want to kick an old man out of his house?
He wasn't planning on kicking him out because it was already gonna get to the point where he was going to end up leaving anyway, so I understood it. She says, "This is the last connection to my grandmother." Kid's like, "I know, that's why I hadn't said anything. When you showed up about helping Tom stay here longer, I didn't even think it was worth bringing up." She goes, "But you thought it was a good idea to kiss me and lead me on while you waited?" Kid's like, "I wasn't leading you on, and I certainly don't wanna be rid of you. I want the opposite of that. You talk about me leading you on. What about you? You kissed me back all while planning to take off again in a few weeks. How did you think this was going to end?" He's also trying to just get her to see his side and telling her, like, you can make new memories. You're so fucking angry at Kit. I am angry at her.
I love
And
this.
telling her, like, we can even make new memories. Like, there are options for your grandfather. But she's just so set on this, like, these are the memories. Love of his life is gone. Whatever memories they made now, that's all he has. If I stay, it'll be to make sure he never loses his house. And then she walks out.
So why are his memories okay to be thought of in his heart, but your memories are not okay to be left in your heart? And you need to make yours concrete in his house, and he can't keep his memories concrete in his house, was my thought process.
See, my thing is I didn't assume he was going to turn anything into an inn unless the grandfather ended up leaving. And he could see the signs that there was a real possibility that the grandfather was going to end up not being in that house anymore. So the house is just going to sit there and do nothing.
Eventually, maybe
Saying is
forever.
that was
Right.
my thought process, is that the grandfather is going to end up in a home. So the house is just going to sit there, and why not turn it into something and still keep some of the memories of what they had growing up. He also grew up in that house. So it's not like
Right. But
he
it
was
never
only there for a
should
couple of
have,
years.
right. But it
Yeah,
never
but we
should
don't also
have,
get Kit's point of view.
right. Which I
So
guess was
we're
a
only getting
disservice.
and then we're only getting hers. To me, she
Right.
comes across as fucking crazy. But
No, I
like
can
that's the
totally see
thing.
where she's coming from, but I think
I can see
not
it, but at
getting
the
his
same
point of
time,
view was a
but now
disservice.
she's starting to be like, "Well, fine, then I instead of going back to Pennsylvania to, like,
Well, she's like,
continue
if
thing,
the
I'm just
only
gonna
thing that's
stay."
going to hold on to this house is somebody staying here, I will stay here then.
So
Yes.
then she's also being a little bit manipulative in that way
Not
too.
necessarily. This is my family's home, my namesake. I'm not going to let you take it from me.
The other thing too, though, is she didn't even ask her grandfather if that's what he wanted, and I think that's
Which
where
should have been the first step, yes.
exactly. So she's
But
making all
she's
of these
grown
plans without even
up
asking.
with her grandfather making such a big deal about the house. And even when she got back, he made a big deal about the connection to the grandmother to the
Well,
house.
kind of.
So
He said it, but then he also kind of hinted around that it's not like that he also had other memories. So it wasn't like, I have to stay
later,
in this
but
house,
yeah.
but she just took that and kind of ran with it. But anyways, so she walks out, and as soon as she's gone, she starts crying. And she just feels the burden knowing that she's going to be the one stopping Kit from fulfilling his mother's dreams, but she does not want her grandpa to lose his house. And for the first time, she's struggling to appreciate the scenery around her in this town, which she usually loves. And then she opens her phone and starts Googling ways to make a home safe for old people because now she wants to make sure that she turns this home into somewhere that her grandfather can actually live in and be fine. And as she's walking down the street, she walks past the window of the Plaid Apple and she notices there's a bunch of pumpkin stuff. And now they're selling pumpkin everything. Turns out they also have read the books and they're very
And
pissy about it
everything's 50% off.
and are pissy about it. Another man named Moose said he also read the books and he's also not happy. So everything is now coming back on her because now pretty much the whole town has read these books and they're not really happy with how they were portrayed in these books. She ends up leaving and goes to pumpkin everything and goes to unlock the door. And it's just a lot. An hour later, she spots Riley through the window and asks him if she can buy him a coffee. And she tells him, you're the only person in town who's mad at me for something other than my books, and that he is equally as justified. Though he asks if she really thinks that he is mad at her. He tells her that she was like an older sister to him and he idolized both her and Kit, and she left without saying goodbye. She does apologize, and he says, I was never mad at you. I was just hurt and confused. And he says that when you left, I just realized that maybe you never told me to get lost through everything because you just never noticed I was there. She explains, I spent those last few months before college in a daze of self preservation doing nothing but trying to avoid Kit. I never meant for that to include you. Riley asks if she came back because of guilt, and she says, pretty much. And he asks if she made out with Kit out of guilt too. And she's like, were you spying on us? And he goes, I may have tripped over a shoe and fallen through the front curtains. And after that, nothing I saw was my fault.
She's told maybe you should stop playing that game because she thought that was the reason why he tripped.
He wants to turn our house into a Disney resort. Riley's like, I'd call it more of a country B&B. And she says, you're cool with the house being destroyed. And he goes, I love the house, but the memories we made will always be up here. Riley then says, I've been meaning to read those books of yours. I just haven't had the time. And she just goes, don't do me any favors. I will see you later. Riley thanks her for the talk. Later that evening, Maggie shows up because obviously, Maggie's coming over. And Amy is just going to be leaving. Maggie's like, oh, you can stay. She goes, no, really, it's fine. I'm just going to go. And she is going to go to Josie's house. Josie lives in like a cute little log cabin style home. Amy fills her in on Kit's plans for the house. And Josie says, so let me get this straight. The love of your life wants to buy the house both of you guys grew up in, but you'll only let that happen over your dead body. And if he somehow does manage to buy it, he doesn't actually have enough money for the renovations. So, like, one of Kit's biggest thing is he does not have the money to renovate the house as well as also buy the house to put it into a B&B. Amy's like, right. And Josie's like, yeah, but it's for his mom. And Amy's like, so what? Josie's like, so he's sort of the opposite of a heartless man, a man whose goal in life is to fulfill his mother's dying wish. Amy says it wasn't her dying wish, it was just some drawings in a notebook. But that was kind of harsh to say. Josie says, well, because honestly,
I
she's
mean,
being a
she's
brat.
not wrong.
But she doesn't know that either. She doesn't know
And
if it
he
really
doesn't know
wasn't.
it either.
I'm just saying, like, Amy is being kind of a brat. This is why, because you're Amy. You just wanted, I just can't with you. Josie says, well, whatever. It was obviously important to Kit. Are you sure you want to end your relationship over something so selfless? And of course, Amy's kind of taken aback and goes, how am I the bad guy? But then Josie's like, oh my God, I have a fantastic idea. I could invest in the bed and breakfast. I have a lot of money. Oh, right, over your dead body. Amy's like, you would be cool with yanking an old man's house from underneath him just because it might be fun to work at a B&B. Josie's like, not when you put it that way, but you could always stay in Autumnboro, find a nice place with an in-law apartment. Josie's really trying to get Amy to see different sides of things. Like,
And yes, but Amy does have a point that if he's heading down that path, being in a familiar place is very important.
but she doesn't even know that he actually is heading down that path, though, to
I
be
know she's
honest.
spiraling, but he's getting older and she wants to prepare for the worst.
Or she's also being selfish in her head and doesn't want change, even though she hasn't been here in 10 years and didn't care
No,
enough
I think
until her
she's
grandfather drew through.
truly trying to think about
I guess
making it so
so,
her
but I
grandfather
think
doesn't
I think
have to give up everything.
I I think my issue though is she stayed away for 10 years. She didn't come back once, not a
Yeah.
single time. And the only
But I
reason she
think
came back is
him
because her
injuring
mom,
himself.
but she wasn't even going to do it. She was going to have her mom do it. And the only reason she did it is her mom kind of guilted her into going. Like it had nothing to do with her wanting to go back in the beginning. Like that's
Well,
the thing.
right, she didn't feel like she was ready to go back because she ran away. But now that she's the one in charge of taking care of him and doing, because she was going to rely on her mom to take care of him and do it because she wants him taken care of. Ultimately, she wants him taken care of. But now that she realizes that no one else is going to do it, she has to be the one to do it. So she's going to champion for him.
Doesn't make up for 10 years.
No, but she felt like he was taken care of.
I understand, but anyways, so Josie just says maybe you should ask your grandfather if having you stay and seeing you happy would really feel like losing. She goes home the next day and she meets the representative from the chairlift company, and she learns that the chairlift she wants to install in the house is going to be 5 grand. The grandfather, by the way, does not want any of this to happen. He's like, absolutely fucking no. And she ends up telling him about Kit's plans for the house. And he just goes, oh, she was always very creative, always restoring those antiques. She would have been wonderful at running an inn. Amy says, this is our home. We can't just let him knock down walls and rip out floors. I've decided that if Kit's going to act like a ghoulish vulture, then I'm going to make sure that your luck never runs out. If I move back in and we install a chairlift and a few other things, then we can just keep this house forever. Grandpa asks if she would really move back there just to keep him from making his mother's dreams come true. And she goes, no, I would move back here because of you. You told me that this house was your last connection to grandma. And grandpa says, so you're willing to give up your future to fix the past. Am I like in some form of episode of Doctor Who here? Like, Amy says, what future am I giving up? Orion's gone. There's nothing for me in Pennsylvania. I can write my books here. But he was not talking about Orion, by the way. He was talking about Kit. Over the next few days, Josie was very nice to shuttle them around for doctor's appointments, grocery store, because obviously she's not going to be using Kit. She also does not have a car because it's probably left somewhere. It has become very super clear that Susan, the bus driver, also has read her books. She called Susan a gossip in the book and would flip her the bird all the time. Donnie, again, probably abandoned her car behind a Walmart. And the townsfolk are basically gathering up their pitchforks at this point. And I mean, Orion is really the one who influenced her mean-spirited parts in the book because he was really egging her on when she was writing this, and he thought it was funny, but, she if she thinks about it, like, the heart of this town and the people were just so memorable. They were true characters, and she didn't see it as a bad thing, but she wants to make them see it the way that she sees it as well. Like, she wants to be like, "It's not really a bad thing, so whatever." She wakes up early on Saturday thinking her grandfather would still be asleep, and she decides that she's gonna get some writing done, and she's thinking, "You know what? I'm gonna make a spin-off series." And instead of, like, gory horror, she was thinking cozy mystery, and maybe her characters learn from their past mistakes. And she gets a text from Kit asking her to come outside. When she gets there, Grandpa, Susan, Blake, and what looks like the entire over 65 population is there. So, turns out they're making scarecrows. It was a huge tradition that they did as kids, and it kinda just cheers everybody up. So, Kit has made this a tradition now. It's called the Scarecrows for Seniors. And, of course, everyone, as she's trying to help, are being really rude to her, but honestly, their feelings are super hurt. So, it's kind of understandable why they're just being snippy with her. Kit just wants her, though, to enjoy this. And she's also being super snippy towards Kit as well and saying, oh, yeah, I'm sure this will be lovely for the tourists. And he just says, have you even tried to see any of this from my perspective? And I don't mean the perspective that you've made up in your head where I look like a comic book villain, but like my actual perspective. He also asks if she's even talked to her grandfather, but she doesn't want to give him any idea that grandpa might be in some way okay with selling. And they call it truce. Throughout the whole stuffing of the scarecrows, she learns that Maggie and her grandfather had actually known each other since they were kids. And she does learn a lot more about the people in the town than she knew before. By lunchtime, there were more than 30 scarecrows lined up along the front porch dressed in colorful flannel shirts and jeans. And she just thinks to herself that Rebecca would have understood why the inn could never be built here. Sure, the house and location were perfect, but she also knew that this was the Fox family home and she would never want grandpa to move out. The Parkers weren't just tenants, but they were family. But then she's like, if they left, then yeah, we'd have tenants and strangers, and would keeping the house be worth it if Kit wasn't in it? If Kit doesn't build the inn there, there's a real possibility he's going to leave to go do his dreams. They end up playing around a little bit with water, leaves. They're just having a good time after she had all these thoughts. They end up in the tree house, which he had fixed up. And she tells him, first, I find out you volunteer with the old folks. Now you're telling me you fixed up a tree house for the neighborhood kids. You're making it so hard to convince myself that you're this cold, heartless jerk. And she admits that she still loves him. And he says that he still loves her. And he's like, what's the chances of us making this work? And she says it's 1 in a million. And he just says, "So you're telling me there's a chance." They end up making out, and he tells her that unless you can go back in time and keep my mom from making that journal, this was always going to be my end game. Whether you left home alone or whether your whole family had stayed, it wouldn't have made a difference. But he's been thinking a lot over the past few days. And a few weeks ago, he thought everything was falling into place with him. But then she showed up on the side of the highway, and now he realized that he was wrong. And maybe what was really falling into place was a chance for them to finally be together. And that instead of changing the house they grew up in, maybe he should be asking her to live in it with him. And Amy says that, "I think we can make this work." The following week, they made up for lost time. They go on a last minute getaway to Lake Winnipesaukee, and the only reservation that she could find was at a small bed and breakfast in Meredith. But when she pulled into the driveway, she realized that booking this place was perhaps not the best idea she's ever made because it looks straight out of Kit's mom's journals. And Kit, of course, looks like he's been kind of stabbed in the chest a little bit, but thankfully, the woman behind the desk doesn't look anything like his mom. But whatever, Kit still ends up talking to her. Monday morning, when she's back home, Grandpa was acting a little weird, and she asks him if he was okay. And he just says, "Yeah, I'm fine, but you might want to look at this." And she looks across the common, and there's a bunch of pumpkins that spell out, "Will you go to prom?" And she thinks that another person is getting like a cute little promposal
Promposal.
type of deal. But it was just actually Kit asking her to go to the senior center prom. Then she's like, "But wait a second, prom is not held in the fucking fall." Like, this is not when prom is done. But the senior prom was held in the auditorium of the town hall, and after this prom, it's gonna be turned into a massive haunted house. This prom is kinda set up, and it's just exactly how she had always imagined their prom to be. And, I mean, they have a really good time. The grandfather asks her if she's having a good time, and she goes, "I'm having the best." And he says, "I'm glad everything's finally working out for you too." And she goes, "I could never have imagined this, not even a month ago." And he goes, "You're happy then?" She goes, "Of course." And she goes, "And Osiris, is he a distant memory?" She goes, "Yes, he is a distant memory," after she corrects him for like the millionth time. He goes, "You know, I was wrong when I told you that the house was my last connection to your grandmother. My biggest connection to her is sitting here right next to me. I see her face every single time I look at you. Having you and any grandchildren you might decide to bless me with nearby is all I need to keep her memory alive, not some drafty house. All I ask is that wherever you move, you set aside a small place for me, modest accommodations, a broom closet or a room beneath the stairs like that Potter kid. I don't need much." And I was like, "Bro." And she's like, "I think we could do a bit
Shove
better than
grandpa in
that."
the closet.
Right? She's like, "I think we could do a bit better than that, but are you sure about this? Like, I mean, the house has been in our family for years." And he goes, "And it still will be. I have faith in you too." So he knows that the house would be changed into an inn, but as long as they still own it, it's still in the family. And he asks her if they've got a deal, and she just says it's a deal because she is in love. Yeah. So 4 nights later, they are back at the town hall, and Kit called a meeting. This meeting is basically so she can apologize to everybody. This would be my nightmare because I don't wanna stand up there. So she stands up in front of everybody and she goes, "As many of you know, I wrote some books that were based on this town and the people were in it. When I wrote those books, it was a sour grapes mentality. If I can't be there, then I'm gonna pretend that it was all terrible, but that was only just a defense mechanism." She's always loved this town and she still loves the town. And she just couldn't shake them. The town is just full of unique characters just living inside her head. So, yeah, she portrayed all these people different ways, but she loves all of this. This is just a great moment for her. And she just wants them to know that it was written out of fondness and affection and love, even if it was like a warped sense of love. And then she calls Kit up and he looks fucking confused. And she had brought, I think it's like, is it like her mom's boyfriend? I think her mom's there too. But, anyways, Isaac, is Isaac her mom's boyfriend? Because I couldn't,
No,
because
I
they
don't
work
think so.
together, but for me,
I
it
think
felt
it's like
like
her
they were
boss or
dating.
something. I don't know. It
Oh,
felt like it to me too, but it was
yeah.
like she didn't wanna say it.
Yeah. Basically, she is going to give Kit the deed to the house so that they can do renovations, and she lets him know that Josie is gonna invest so that they have money. Then we get the I guess epilogue. It just says 1 year later. It's not labeled as epilogue, but it just says 1 year later. And it has been renovated. And what used to be Kit and Riley's apartment is now the reception and check-in desk. They did not take down the turret, which was originally like the plan. And so she writes up in the turret, and it had
She
been
has
walled
like an
off and
office
a
up
locked door.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Over the summer, her and Kit were married, and it's cute. And she does drink pumpkin spice now. You're welcome. So, Ariel, who was your favorite character?
Probably Josie, even though at first I was like, what the fuck? But after the initial meeting of her, she was amusing.
Ah, I also really loved Josie. She was probably my favorite character. I liked her a lot.
Who was your least favorite?
I'm not gonna lie, I did not really like Amy.
I honestly didn't like the grandfather's girlfriend.
She was a bit much. She was a
Yeah.
bit much, Maggie. Yeah.
And I felt like she really didn't play much of a role.
No, she was just kind of there.
Yeah.
Amazon gives us a 4.2 and Goodreads a 3.7. Where are you at, my dear?
I gave it 2.5 stars. What did you give it?
3?
It was meh.
It's cute.
It it had potential to be cute. There was no smut. It was like a tourist wrote a book about New Hampshire. Like the name drops were ridiculous, but it had potential.
Yeah.
I liked the concept of the town and the townsfolks.
Hmm.
Cucumber.
Oh, well, obviously there's no cucumber because
That's what I was gonna say.
yeah, no cucumber survivability, I'd be fine.
I would also be fine.
It's like my life.
And not have to go very far.
Yeah. So yeah, that was Pumpkin Everything.
We're gonna plan on watching the movie and we'll let you know during our special what we thought.
So what's next, Ariel?
Okay, so here's the thing though. We have on our list next to read Credence because it is a scary book in theory because of the
The
taboo
subject matter.
subject matter. However, it's not, after we just read that other one, it's not that taboo scary for me. So, Credence by Penelope Douglas. Tiernan de Haas doesn't care about anything anymore. The only child of a film producer and his starlet wife, she's grown up with wealth and privilege, but not love or guidance. Shipped off to boarding schools from an early age, it was still impossible to escape the loneliness and carve out a life of her own. The shadow of her parents' fame followed her everywhere. And when they suddenly pass away, she knows she should be devastated, but has anything really changed? She's always been alone, hasn't she? Jake Vanderberg, her father's stepbrother and only living relative, assumes guardianship of Tiernan, who is still shy of being 18. Sent to live with him and his two sons, Noah and Caleb, in the mountains of Colorado, Tiernan soon learns that these men now have a say in what she does and what she chooses to care or not care about anymore. As the three of them take her under their wing, teach her to work and survive in the remote woods far away from the rest of the world, she slowly finds her place among them and as a part of them. She also realizes that lines blur and rules become easy to break when no one else is watching. One of them has her, the other one wants her, but he's going to keep her.
All right. Well, we'll see how that goes.
So join us next week and make sure to keep reading.
And keep it smutty.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, fuck.